Portuguese, Spanish within Europe. And then it was Turkish people, Pakistani people, Moroccan and North African people coming into Europe. And now they are all together perceived as mainly coming from the same religion. So we are adding to the geographical origin, the cultural origin, and the religious affiliation. So all this is a new type of migrants. Now you are asking a very important question. We are dealing with facts, and sometimes the cultural attitude or the religious attitude is questioning our habits. These people are not like us. Even if, for example, the Italian or the Polish were more Catholic, more practicing, now it's completely a new type
We had the idea that they shared a sort of worldview.
Exactly. So let me just stress on some of the points that are quite important. In this discussion today, there is a great deal of confusion. We are dealing with differences, but we don't know exactly what we are talking about. So there are three fields which are quite important. The first field is something which is as old as migrations, but it's more perceived now, a new visibility with the cultural dimension. So if you know the Turkish people or the Moroccan people or even the Surinamese people, you can feel that there are differences in the way they deal with the society. And this is cultural. So you have to deal with cultures. Now you also have attitudes that are coming from a religious understanding because they mainly are Muslims. So you have commonalities and you have diversity. So differences. So the problem is that very often we take for religious differences things that are cultural. And we take for cultural differences things that sometimes are religious. Add to this something which is, if I may, because it's complex. If we want to know the differences, we have to look at the differences at different levels. And then you add to this something which is common to all the migrations, which has to do with social status. Because the people may be poor, and you look at poor people, you think that it's cultural, but in fact it's only a class relationship with power. It has nothing to do with culture. So if you culturalize socioeconomic problems, and you look at the socioeconomic problem through a religious viewpoint, you are confusing the debate and not helping.
Let me join in here, because I think that is exactly the three domains where you would see difference. First of all, you would see, at least in that part of migration that came through as guest workers, often lowly qualified people, not very much education. So you see social disadvantage and all the problems, you know, exactly in our welfare state, a level of unemployment also that is too high, far too high, and also, you know, is an obstacle for the children who are born. I mean, I come in schools, for example, the Rütli Schule in Berlin, or Saint-Mauron, a school I visited in Marseille, where the teachers tell me, you know, 90% of the parents of the children who are coming here are unemployed. And they are the only ones in the morning who get up. And how can we convince them that it's worthwhile getting up and going to school if they're in a neighborhood where very few people work? So that is where it starts. Secondly, culture. I think there is, on the whole, if you look at migrant communities, but then I generalize, I think there is a somewhat more traditional, conservative outlook on the relation between men and women, the way young people should relate to their parents, etc. So, yes, I can see that migration often distorts relations within families. Why? Because the parents were born in the country of origin, with all the ideas about marriage, about how you should live, what a decent life is. The children are partly socialized in the country of arrival, are in the streets, go to school, learn a lot of different things there, and the gap between the generations, but that is true for the Italian immigrants a century ago as well, is large, and often the parents feel powerless confronted with their children.
Just to interrupt for one moment, because especially the fact what you're mentioning now, that it was the same with the Italians, because that's the impact of migration. But can you, is there a difference, as you mentioned, there are new migrants. Is there also a difference in the way family is looked at and generations are looked at in the new migrants?
Well,
so
come to religion, because that is of course the third dimension. But there is of course a lot of traditional rural culture, and the saying always was, for example in Morocco it was said, you know, you go on the donkey to the airplane, which meant that the migrants who came to the Netherlands, or also